Yasmina.
Hey,
Hey.
hey, Miss
Hi.
Johnson, how are you?
How are you, love? How you
Good.
been?
Nice to see you.
It's good to see you
We're live
too.
on Instagram. What's that?
Okay, it's something new for me. Something new for me.
Yes, this is your first time on Instagram Live.
This is my very first time.
Well, we are here on the Ourcity DC platform, which was founded from behind the walls of America's system of mass incarceration by Anton White. And they're giving us the Ourcity platform to just have a conversation about what's happening in DC with displacement, gentrification, and specifically in the Saratoga neighborhood. I know you're on the Brentwood side. So, we just have a casual conversation about what's happening in the city. So I wanted to open up by giving you the floor to just kind of introduce yourself and just let people who are watching know what is happening there with regards to gentrification and how you've seen things played out as you've lived there for so many years.
Okay, hi everybody. I'm Yvonne Johnson. I've lived in Brooklyn Manor for 40 years. I worked in District of Columbia Public Schools for 28 years. And the changes that we've seen in the area, and I think the nice word you used was gentrification. That sounds good, but that means displacement of Black people
Right.
in the Washington, D.C. area. One of the things that's happening in Brooklyn Manor is that many of us have been displaced. Some are not living well in these apartments because of the mold and other things that are here. We have a lot of rats, and then we have the large fenced-in areas that have been put around so children can have a place to play. So this is the new things that have been happening recently for the past, I say, 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
When I first moved here, we had a small playground on the Brentwood Road. We had playgrounds on each part of the area,
Mm-hmm.
so children would have a place to play.
Mm-hmm.
Now they have no place to play.
Mm-hmm.
It's very difficult for our children now.
Yeah.
And one of the things that you've worked with and we've both worked with is trying to let the owners know that the people here deserve to live here.
Mm-hmm.
We've worked hard for this area. Many of us have helped the owner to keep the place when he was having a difficult time. And Miss Elliott, who's not able to be with us, worked hard with the owner, Mr. Ford, to help him keep this place because he almost lost it. And he was very grateful to the people in Brooklyn Manor, which was Brentwood then, for their help. And now no one seems to remember or even care about the work that was put into these apartments.
Mm-hmm. Ms. Johnson, can you say something about how you think, how exactly has displacement played out on the ground? You mentioned the fencing off of some areas, but how does it play out day to day? How are families impacted day to day?
Well, many of the children, my emphasis is always on young children. And psychologically, I'm concerned about their well-being. When you're constantly feeling like you're not a part of something, that you can't play, or you're being told that you can't play in this part of the placement areas. You can't walk here and things like that. That's very difficult for children to understand.
Mm-hmm.
And many times our children have been told, you can't play in this area.
Mm-hmm.
You can't walk in this area.
Mm-hmm.
That's very difficult for young children.
Yeah. Yeah. And one thing that developers commonly do, which they have done at Brooklyn Manor, is hire a private police force to kind of enforce these new rules that they're coming up with about, you know, where kids can and can't play and who can and can't lean on the fences that they erect and all of that stuff. How has having a private armed police force, you know, working hand in hand with MPD, constantly patrolling the how has that impacted day-to-day life in the
Well,
neighborhood for you?
we've had many security guards here. The first group that were here were a group that were very difficult to work with. They decided that the one group even told children that they needed to not play in a certain area. They needed to play on Brentwood Road. And they would, you know, I must tell you, a police officer came up and said, no, these tiny children are not going to play on Brentwood Road. They need to play in this area up here. We've even had them when an ambulance would come and a person was ill, they would come and ask the attendants in the ambulance, what's the person's name? What's wrong with that person? I've even had them enter my apartment when my mother was ill at 90 years old. And the fire department, a lot of them were here, and they said, why are you in her apartment? What are you doing inside of her apartment? And they actually put them out. So, you know, those are things that were very difficult at the time. And again, they changed security again, and they kept changing them and changing them. So this is a constant thing that goes on, and we don't know who these people are, and they never introduce themselves. We have to find out who they are, where they come from, or anything like that. We know nothing about the group that's so-called, I think they think they're taking care of us. I don't think so.
So the things that you have seen them doing have not felt like made the community feel safer.
No, we're not safe. We're not safe. And we know we're not safe. And so therefore we, you know, the people in the community don't feel safe, and we don't know who to turn to for safety.
Can you talk about a little bit about how the developer, in this case, Mid-City Financial, has specifically targeted families? What kinds of tactics have they been using to actually, you know, break families up? What does that look like?
Well, as soon as a young person turns a certain age, maybe 18, they usually ask them if they want their own apartment. And they try to tell young people that they don't need to stay at home with their relatives. And many of the young people have their own apartments now. But because you're only 18, you really don't know what that's about. And you need the family structure to show you how to take care of yourself, how to handle your bills and things like that. And many of them don't. My granddaughter was even asked if she wanted her own apartment, and she was going away up to college. She was in college. What would she need her own apartment for, you know? And those are things like that. And
So
it's
by them offering those young people in the family apartments, that basically makes the family size smaller. And then, like, if your granddaughter had taken the apartment, then they would have asked you to move down into a smaller size.
Yes, they would ask. They would ask if you have. For me, as a senior citizen, they would ask me to move into probably a separate place because they would say, well, why don't you get your own place? And then your daughter could have her own place. So they would break up the families that way.
Yeah.
And many of the families have been together for many years, and they are saying, no, we're not going to break up our families. We're not doing that.
Yeah. And so by doing that, they can then clear out the large bedroom units, and then they can say, well, there aren't any families that need them, and
That's what
proceed with their plan.
right. This is the whole thing, is to break up families. Then I can say we don't need 4 or 5 bedrooms. We only need. But
Mm-hmm.
what they haven't seen, what we've seen now, is there are more babies being born on the property.
Mm-hmm.
So we have more and more children than we've had before. And
Mm-hmm.
so now the mothers are sitting in 2 bedrooms when they have about, some of these young ladies have 4 and 5 children,
Mm-hmm.
and some have husbands, and you have a husband, you have 4 or 5 children, you need a larger apartment.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, one thing, when I talk to a lot of people about Brooklyn Manor, especially people who are, just learning about it, and they're, because they've never experienced it themselves or been around it, they're skeptical that this kind of thing is really happening. And when they read the news, they're like, well, Mid-City Financial says that they've talked to the tenants. They said that tenants have signed their petitions. They've said that, tenants actually want this redevelopment to happen, and they would rather live in the new planned, 1800, 2 bedrooms and under village that they plan on building. So what do you have to say to people who are kind of skeptical about the situation and they keep wanting to give the developer the benefit of the doubt?
Well, those are usually I always tell that, we have a group of privileged people
Mm-hmm.
who think things are wonderful and everything is just great until they walk the property.
Mm-hmm.
When I've taken a group who have walked this property and seen what we have to show them. Some people you have to show them. They don't believe you until they see it with their own eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And once they see it, once they see the children and talk to some of the people that live here,
Mm-hmm.
then they say, oh my goodness, this is really happening.
Mm-hmm.
And we walked a group through here and they couldn't believe what they were looking at.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always tell people, come and see with your own eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Come talk to the people that live here.
Mm-hmm.
Don't listen to others who tell you, oh, they don't want something new. Everyone wants something new, but you want to be able to live in the place
Mm-hmm.
and not be told it's only for the elite.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So then let me also bring up this other thing that we always hear, and we actually kind of heard this from the judges at appeals court, where they were like, well, look, this is how the economic system works. If the rents get too high, then it's basically too bad. You have to go somewhere where you can afford the rents. And if not, then figure out a way to make more money so that you can pay the rents based on the market. And so you have, a lot of the privilege, as you described, with this mentality that, you just have to deal with the market. And it is what it is. Some people are going to, have more than others, and that's just how things are. What do you think about, that kind of thought process and attitude? Like because that attitude also exists even among those that are not actually privileged, but they just have taken on this mentality, despite
We
the
know who
fact
they
that
are.
they're, yeah.
Yeah, we know who they are.
Yeah.
Many times, the people that they're talking about, these are families that have worked 2 and 3 jobs, and they some of them are retired, and some of the people that they're talking about have lived in this city and were born in this city, and a lot of the people that are talking about oh wow, they need to move if they can't afford it. Well, soon you won't be able to afford it either, because right now many of those same people that were telling us that we needed to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps have also found out that they don't have any boots either.
Mm-hmm.
Because of this virus that's going around, many people don't have jobs anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And all those people that told us that, oh, too bad. What you need to do is this, that. They can't do it either.
Mm-hmm.
So now I often say, well, okay, you told us what we had to do. What are you going to do?
Mm-hmm.
Because many of them can't do it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
They're losing their homes. They're losing their apartments, just like the people that you complain about that they didn't have the money to live there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm looking at some notes that I made here. Um, so I mean, do you think it's any secret at this point that Washington, D.C. is run by developers? What do you think is holding back the possibility of changing the system, of reorganizing it, of making housing a human right, of making displacement a crime? I mean, right now, Washington, D.C., the zoning commission looks at development plans, and even though they see that those plans will require displacement, they still approve them, and that's not a crime. What do you think it would take to reorganize that? I mean, now that COVID has happened, and also with all of the protests that we've seen against, the police murders that have been happening all around the country, do you think people's eyes are more open to the fact that the system is basically rigged? And what do you think it would take to transform it?
I think it's going to take a lot of work. We need every young person, and some of us have been fighting a long time, and we need every young person to stand up. We need you to vote. We need to vote people out
Mm-hmm.
that don't seem to care about the people. I want to see them gone.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to protest and let them know in front of their homes. We need to also, many of them say, well, I have children. Yes, you do. And we want your children to know that you have turned your back on other children.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that's what it takes. It takes the protesting, it takes the voting, and we have to stand up and say, no, we're not going to take this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to go wherever we have to go to protest against this injustice in this city.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you have anything else that you want to share about just what you've seen over the years? Maybe not, what's happening right at this moment, but just how you've seen the city change over time. Like, what changes have you seen happen before your eyes as it's been rapidly gentrified?
Oh my goodness. Because I was born here, I remember when Lucy Slow School was the school for blacks, and Noyes School was the school for white children. And when integration started, we had to walk 14 blocks, even though I lived a half a block from the school, Noyes School. We had to walk 14 blocks to integrate Noyes Elementary School. And when I walked in on the blackboard, it said, we left you niggas nothing. It was a very difficult thing for a little girl to read. And it stuck in my mind. At my age, it's still there. That same pain and the same hurt that someone would say that and leave it there for a child to see. And I had a wonderful principal who let us know that she had everything we needed to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up working in the same school that they didn't want me there.
Mm-hmm.
The whole thing with our children is they have to learn their history. They have to know where they came from and be proud of it. And so many of the times, our children are not taught their African American history.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know it and they don't feel it. And so therefore, we have many of our children just learning about George Washington Carver and certain ones, but they need to know more. They need to know that they came from kings and queens, and they're strong people. We've been through a lot. And so now what we're seeing now is that the strength of a lot of these former, and I say the Martin Luther Kings and all them, have come through, and our children are feeling this strength now. And I'm so proud of them. I don't know what to do. And I want them to continue on and don't stop. And don't let them stop you. And there are going to be ways and times that are going to be very hard for them. And I'll tell them that now. And we have people that don't want you to succeed, but you can, and you will.
Thanks, Ms. Johnson. That's what I was going to ask you next. I was going to ask you how you felt about all these young people coming out and flooding the streets in solidarity with one another, you know, against this systematic violence. And I know that as an elder in the community, along with other elders, you know, you've been on the front lines of the fight, and there have not been as many youth that have come and stood up and fought back in that, you know, at Saratoga. So it's going to be.
That's because they don't know. They don't know. They didn't learn. The school system failed them, and I will tell you that honestly, because when they should have known more about themselves and been given the strength to know more about who you are and what you are, they weren't given that. So they think now, this is all I am. But you are more than that, you know, and we want them to learn that. We want them to know that. And the only way we can do that is through education. And we have to educate our young people.
Yeah,
that is important. It's very important.
Yeah. Another public sector, you know, another thing that should be state of the art education system that instead is, you know, being shifted over to a private model that the system can make money off of. It seems like every major industry is controlled by these money interests, and it seems like such a big feat to, you know, change that around. But like you said, it's going to take a lot of work.
Well, yeah. One of the things that happens is the education, and I think it was called The Miseducation of the American Negro. I would recommend a lot of people read that book. But one of the things that happens with a lot of the instructors of our children, they didn't learn anything either. Some of them weren't even taught.
Yeah.
So if you weren't taught, you can't teach anybody else, you know. And I'm so glad we have our museum now, that beautiful African museum, which every child should be a part of and should be able to visit. But do you know that in the District of Columbia Public Schools, a lot of the children have not been taken on those trips so they could visit that museum. And that should be a requirement. That every child in the District of Columbia visit that museum. And then have a dialogue with them afterwards about what they saw, how they feel. And those are the things that they need, but they're not getting that. We also need Howard University to pay a little more attention to our children. And that's the only Black college we have in the District of Columbia. And we need them to start reaching out a little more to the neighborhoods and giving them a little more of their attention.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're speaking from the perspective of also an educator and somebody who taught in the public school system for what, 30 years, right?
Almost 30. And the thing, the parts that get me and hurt me the most is now, we used to have a thing where the police department would come and visit the schools and things like that. Now our children are afraid of the police. I mean, I have been almost in tears because now our children, we used to tell them, if you're in trouble, get a policeman. Now our children are saying, we're not getting a policeman, we're running. We're scared of the police.
Mhm.
This is a horrible thing for a child to know. I've also seen something where a young black child at 9 years old went to a restaurant in Baltimore and was told that he could not come in because of the way he was dressed. And the little white child that was there had the same clothes on.
Mhm.
But that child was told it hurt the child so badly. He had never been told because he was black, you're not allowed in this restaurant. And
Mhm.
that's what it was.
Mhm.
And now we have to educate our children at a very young age
Mhm.
that these are things that are going to happen to you. You have to know how to handle yourself. You have to know how to talk. You have to be aware of your surroundings all the time and things like that. These are things that we did not have to do before with our children.
Mhm.
But now our children are afraid.
Mhm.
And to be afraid of people, this is something that should not be for our children.
Mhm. Yeah, it's basically created warlike conditions where, you're not getting what you need from the education system. The job opportunities that are supposed to be there are not there, at the pay rate that they're supposed to be. Every single, path that's available could end up with you being in a cage.
And your healthcare, the
And
healthcare.
exactly, all along the way, you have the issue of healthcare.
That's
Yeah.
right. So all of these things are coming at our children, and it's coming at them in a way that they don't really know how to handle it. So
Mhm.
therefore, we need to have all of our uh, black psychologists on board.
Mhm.
They need to be working hard to help our children, and we need to get them on board in the school system to give our children the support they need right now.
Mhm.
And they need it now. We don't
Mhm.
need it later. We need it now.
Mhm. Exactly. Exactly. And that's what people need to hear, and that's why it's actually those on the front lines that should be making these policies, and not those that are, hiding behind their office doors in their suits making these policies, whether we're talking about education or housing.
All right. And many of them are hiding behind the doors.
Yeah.
We know that for sure. We've
Yeah.
seen that. You and I have seen that happen. We've
Yeah.
also seen them run from us when we come.
Yes, we have.
You
Yeah.
know.
So thank you so much, Ms. Johnson. I don't want to hold you all night because I know you have another virtual meeting tomorrow morning. But I really appreciate you coming on this platform, and thank Ourcity DC for letting us host the conversation on this platform, and elevating the voices of Washingtonians that are on the front lines, really fighting back against what is being thrown at you. Any final words before we end our live call?
Well, just want to say we have to keep up the fight, and we just have to be strong, and we have to remember to keep going and going and going and not stopping
Mhm.
until we get what we need.
Definitely. Thank you so
Okay.
much, Ms. Johnson.
Bye-bye.
All right. Good night.
Good night.